August morning. Nearly almost 2 decades ago, my mother woke me up, handed me a jacket, and then she put me in a cab. Baka manindu were one of the few words she said that night. It might be cold there. So after I arrived at the Philippines at the international airport, my mother introduced me to a man that I have never seen before. She told me that he was my uncle. As he held my hand, we boarded an airplane. It was for the first time in my life. It was 1993, and I was 12. There are some who witness immigration firsthand, and there are some who see this in the newscast. But this is a story of so many who live in the shadows of society. A man named Jose Antonio Vargas found the courage to speak out as I spoke, in hope of one day he can live the American dream. My life is an undocumented immigrant by Jose Antonio Vargas. So my mother wanted to give me a better life, so she sent me thousands of miles away to go live with my grandparents, my grandfather, Lolo, and my grandmother, Lola. After I arrived in Mountain View, California, I entered the 6th grade, and I quickly grew to love this new home, this family, and this culture. However, it was very difficult to learn the language, and I still couldn't tell the difference between formal English and the American slang. One of my earliest memories was when this freckle kid came up to me in middle school and asked, "Hey man, what's up?" And I confusedly replied, "The sky?" And of course, him and his friends were laughing at me. I also won the 8th grade spelling bee by memorizing words that I could hardly pronounce. The winning word was indefatigable. Indecatable. I don't know, to this day I still can't even say it. But when I was 16, I rode my bike to the nearest DMV office to go get my driver's permit. And when I handed the clerk my green card to show proof of U.S. residency, she took it, she examined it, and then she leaned in close and whispered at me, "This is fake. Don't come back here again." Confused and scared, I ran out of that office and I pedaled home as fast as I could, and I confronted Lolo. "Lolo, baka ba ito? Is this fake?" I saw the shame in his face when he told me that he had purchased his green card along with other fake documents that I own. You see, my grandparents, they were naturalized American citizens, and I wasn't. So at that moment, I decided for myself that I should not give anyone any reason to doubt that I'm American. Over the past 14 years, I've graduated high school and college, and I built a career for myself. As a journalist, I interviewed some of the most famous people in this country. On the surface, I could say that I lived myself a great life. I lived the American dream. But I'm still an undocumented immigrant. So that means I have to live a different kind of reality. So my family photos, I can't have them displayed in the shelves of my home. So instead I have them in this little shoebox under my mattress. And also that means I have to reluctantly do things that I know are wrong and unlawful. After my encounter at the DMV in 1997, I grew more aware of these anti-immigration sentiments and stereotypes. These people are drained to society. They don't want to assimilate. I am not a part of that, I would always tell myself. I have something to contribute. My first challenge was the language. Although I learned English in the Philippines, I had an accent and I wanted to get rid of it. So that means I spent productive hours watching rerun shows like Home Improvement, Frasier, and The Golden Girls. I also had to look for work. So one day my grandfather and I, we went to Kinko's to go make photocopies of a social security card. Well, at a glance, at least the photocopies would look like regular unrestricted ones, but they were fake. This deceit never got easier. The more I did it, the more I felt like an imposter. The more guilt I'd have to carry. The more that I worried that one day I'll get caught. But I just kept doing it. And I needed to live and survive on my own, and I decided that this was the only way. I was now a senior, and the Washington Post had offered me a 2-year internship when I graduated. And this was an opportunity that was just too tempting to pass up. So after I graduated, I moved to Washington. And after about 4 months of working at the Post, I began to feel increasingly paranoid, like if I had illegal immigrants tattooed on my forehead. And of course, Washington, out of all places, where immigration debates seem never ending. I did my best to steer clear on reporting on immigration policies. But on April 2008, I was part of a post team that had won the Pulitzer Prize Award for the Virginia Tech shooting a year earlier. My grandfather, Lolo, died a year earlier. So was my grandmother, who gave me the announcement. The first thing she said was, "Miling tao, ching chao, milang ting tao." What will happen if people found out? I learned that there is no amount of professional success that would solve my problems or ease the sense of loss and displacement I felt. I lied to a friend of why I couldn't take a weekend trip to Mexico. Another time I concocted an excuse of why I couldn't take an all-expenses paid trip to Switzerland. I have been unwilling for years, and I can't even be in a long-term relationship because I don't want anyone to get too attached and ask so many questions. Then Lola's question was stuck in my head. What will happen if people found out? So I decided to own up and come forward to what I had done, and tell my story to the best of my recollection. Contact former bosses and employers and apologize for misleading them. Of course, a mix of humiliation and liberation are combined in that disclosure, but I don't know what the consequences will be telling my story. There are 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. We're not always who you think we are. Some could be picking out your strawberries. Some are in college. And some turn out write news articles that you just happen to read every day. I grew up here. This is my home. Yet even though I consider myself American and consider America my country, I don't think my country considers me as one of their own. Not long ago, I called my mother because I wanted to fill in the memory gaps of that one August morning so many years ago. We have never discussed it. Part of me just wanted to shove that memory aside, but to honestly face the facts of my life, I needed more details. Did I cry? Did she? Did we kiss goodbye? She told me I was excited to get on an airplane and that I was going to meet the pilot. She also reminded me of a piece of advice that she gave me before I left, just so I can fit in. She said, if anyone ever asked you why you wanted to come to America, you should say, I should say that I wanted to come to Disney.